The forest is burning. Every animal runs. Every instinct says, go. But one of them stops, turns around, and walks toward the flames. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans didn't make fire. They found it. A lightning strike, a volcanic vent, a brush fire sparked by the summer heat. Fire existed long before we did. And for most of our history, our relationship with it was simple. We didn't control it, we followed it. Archaeologists call this fire opportunism. When wildfire swept through a landscape, it left something behind: cooked meat, warmth, light, cracked bones soft enough to eat, seeds toasted open, ground clear of predators. And early humans, Homo erectus, walking Africa 1.5 million years ago, learned to exploit that aftermath. They weren't stupid, they were precise. They knew which direction the wind blew the fire, which animals fled and which stayed, which parts of a burned landscape were safe to enter and when. They read wildfire like a map. They didn't start it, they just arrived after it was done. But at some point, someone took it a step further. Instead of eating what the fire left behind, they carried the fire itself. A burning branch, a smoldering coal wrapped in bark or damp leaves, stolen from the edge of a wildfire, brought back to the group, fed, kept alive. This was not invention, this was theft, and it may have been the most consequential crime in human history. But here's what nobody talks about. Carrying fire is extraordinarily difficult. It dies without fuel, without air, without attention. It needs to be fed constantly, sheltered from wind, moved carefully. Drop it wrong and it's gone. Leave it unattended for an hour and it's ash. Which means the first humans who carried fire weren't just brave, they were obsessed. They fed it, guarded it, slept next to it. Some researchers believe entire social hierarchies formed around fire custody. The one who kept the coal alive held power no weapon could match. For generations, some groups had fire, and some didn't, and the ones who didn't would do anything to get it. Fire became the most valuable thing a group could own. Not food, not territory, not weapons. Fire. Because fire meant cooked meat, twice the calories, easier to digest, safer to store. Fire meant warmth, survival at altitudes and latitudes that would otherwise kill you. Fire meant light, and everything that comes with light. Safety, community, time after dark. But it meant something else too, something harder to measure. Fire meant gathering. Before fire, a group dispersed at dusk. Each person found their own shelter, their own tree, their own hiding place. After fire, they stayed together, in a circle, in the dark, for hours. Anthropologists believe this is where language accelerated, not because fire made humans smarter, but because fire gave them time. Time to sit, to talk, to tell stories, to argue, to plan. The campfire may be the oldest classroom on Earth. There is evidence from sites across Africa and Asia that fire was being maintained, not just used, as far back as 1 million years ago. Maintained means someone's job was to keep it alive. Someone watched the coals through the night. Someone carried them when the group moved. Someone made sure the fire never went out, because if it went out, you had to steal it again, and that was not always possible. So what happened when a group lost their fire, and there was no wildfire nearby, no lightning, no volcano, just darkness and cold, and the sound of things moving outside the camp? Researchers believe this pressure, the terror of losing fire permanently, was exactly what drove humans to do something that should have been impossible: make it themselves. But how do you invent something you've only ever found? How do you look at cold wood and cold stone and think, there is fire in here, I just have to get it out? The answer probably wasn't a moment of genius, it was an accident. Repeated, noticed, remembered. Homo erectus was already knapping flint, striking stones together to make sharp tools. And flint, when struck against iron pyrite, produces sparks, hot sparks, bright sparks, the kind that land in dry tinder and keep going. Someone at some point was making a tool and started a fire instead. Did they notice immediately? Maybe not the first time, maybe not the 10th. The spark lands, fades, nothing happens. But one day the tinder is drier, the spark lands differently. A thin thread of smoke rises, and then a glow, and then a flame. And someone thought, I did that. That moment, that single cognitive leap, is one of the most important thoughts in the history of our species. Not the fire itself, the realization that fire could be caused, that it wasn't a gift from the sky, that it wasn't luck, that it was repeatable. That thought, I can do this again, is the beginning of technology. Not the wheel, not the blade. This, a person staring at a flame they made themselves, understanding for the first time that the world could be changed on purpose. But here's where it gets complicated. Because the archaeological evidence doesn't show a clean invention moment. There's no site where we find the first fire-making tools, and nothing before them. No single origin point. No clear before and after. Instead, what we find is something stranger. Fire appears and disappears from the record. Groups had it, lost it, had it again centuries later, which means the knowledge of how to make fire, even once discovered, was not guaranteed to survive. Think about what it takes to pass knowledge down. You need language, or demonstration, or enough stability to teach. Early human groups were small, vulnerable, mobile, a harsh winter, a predator attack, a disease moving through the camp, and suddenly the one person who knew how to strike fire was gone. The knowledge died with them. This is why fire making wasn't a single invention that spread across the world. It was discovered, lost, rediscovered, over and over and over again, for hundreds of thousands of years. In some parts of the world, groups were still relying on carried fire well into the period when others had already mastered friction. 2 sticks, rubbed together, fast enough, long enough. The bow drill, the hand drill, the fire plow, each technique independently discovered in different corners of the world, each one lost by some groups, rediscovered by others, and each time the knowledge died, someone somewhere had to figure it out again from scratch, with no instructions. No memory of how it had been done before, just the problem, and the materials, and necessity. Fire making wasn't a revolution, it was a slow, fragile, constantly interrupted accumulation of knowledge, carried forward by people who had no idea they were making history. So why does the record eventually stabilize? Why did fire making finally stick? The answer is the same thing that made the dark safe to enter: other people. When groups started meeting, trading shells, exchanging tools, sitting around fires that neither group had started alone, they also exchanged knowledge. The technique for making fire spread the same way a shell necklace spread: person to person, camp to camp, generation to generation. Fire making didn't survive because one genius figured it out. It survived because humans learned to share what they knew. And once the knowledge was shared widely enough, it became harder to lose. There's a version of this story where fire is about dominance, the clever human who mastered nature, who conquered the darkness and the cold, who separated himself from the animals forever. But the real story is quieter than that. The real story is about a group of people desperately guarding a coal through the night, about someone noticing a spark from a stone and not forgetting it. About a piece of knowledge so fragile it died 100 times before it finally survived long enough to matter. Fire wasn't stolen from the gods. It wasn't invented by a genius in a single moment of inspiration. It was pieced together, lost, found again, shared, across hundreds of thousands of years, by people who had no guarantee it would work, who tried anyway, who noticed things, who remembered. The first human to make fire didn't invent anything. They noticed something: a spark, a thread of smoke, a glow in dry grass. And instead of moving on, they stayed. They watched. They tried again. That's not a small thing. That's everything.